Today we're diving into Smile 2, the sequel to Smile 1 that was released in 2022, which is a supernatural movie that had a creepy twist on a very unpleasant premise. But the real question is, does Smile 2 add anything new to the genre or to the story, or is it just another horror movie with confusing characters? Just a quick heads up, if you have not watched this movie before, there will be spoilers going ahead, so pause this, go watch the movie, unless you really don't care about being spoiled, but this is your warning. Alright, so Smile 2 brings us back into the same eerie world. The movie starts with a man waiting in front of what looks like a drug dealer's house. After someone else pulls up, he follows them inside the house and starts shooting at everyone. It's clear he was looking for someone specific as he's very visibly upset. He accidentally killed one of the drug dealers, and it seems he was trying to capture that person so he could transfer the entity to them. As he's leaving the house, another group of people arrive and surround it. He does manage to escape, but as he's running into the street, he gets hit by a passing vehicle, and this kind of kicks off the movie. This time the movie is focused on Sky Riley, played by Naomi Scott, a rich but utterly messed up woman. On the surface, she has everything going for her, but underneath, it's clear she's a terrible person. Here's how it all starts. Sky gets infected by the evil entity, but it's not random like in the original movie. This time she catches it from her drug dealer. Yes, you heard that right. She ends up dealing with this sinister entity after trying to buy drugs. So life lessons, avoid drugs, you might get possessed. After the initial encounter, she really starts to spiral. And it feels like the entity is just amplifying her already questionable behavior into outright madness. The more she spirals, the worse it gets. But here's the part that a lot of people probably get stuck on, including myself. It's hard to figure out if it's the evil entity's influence that's making her do these things, or if Sky was just a horrible person to begin with. Right from the start, we're given a very awkward scene. Sky falls on stage and then claims that someone tripped her. In reality, she just hallucinated her leg was messed up. Instead of admitting it was a hallucination or just saying she tripped, she accused someone else just to save face. Now, mind you, this movie started after she was in a car accident and her leg was messed up. And this really does set the tone that Sky's manipulative and self-serving, making you question once again if it's the entity is even needed, or is she just really just a bad person? Later on, a guy named Morris contacts Sky and they meet up in a bar. Now, Morris explains what the entity is, and he actually has a plan to get rid of it. Now, unlike the first movie where the main character, we saw her figure out what the entity is and how it operates, Sky ain't doing none of that. But Morris did have a plan, which was to induce Sky into a state where she would be clinically dead. Instead of listening to this, Sky gets upset and offended by the idea of just being temporarily, clinically dead, and leaves. What does she do instead? She goes home, thinks about the situation, gets upset, breaks a mirror, and then swallows the glass, which will permanently kill her. The entity did step in and pull this glass out of her mouth. It's really ironic that she found the suggestion of being temporarily, clinically dead offensive, but the moment she's at home, she decides to just do the permanent act. Now, moments like these really make me wonder how insane Sky is, or if she's losing grasp or grip with reality. Things further escalate when Sky wakes up in the hospital after this whole glass incident. She proceeds to then stab her mom. Instead of calling for help, because she's in a hospital, she watches her mom die and then calmly covers her body with a sheet. While it initially seems like a panic reaction, you start to suspect the entity probably at this point has fully taken over. When she's running out of the hospital, her ex picks her up. And then while she's driving, she receives a phone call from her ex. This then revealed that the actual person was the entity all along. Within that moment, it shifts to where you see Sky's actually the person that's been driving the whole time. She did reach out to Morris, and she goes and finds Morris, who then locks her in a freezer. Because the premise is he's going to put her in this freezer, he's going to make her clinically dead, he's going to make sure her body temperature, everything falls as low as possible to avoid like brain damage and stuff that happens to you during that time. Well, Morris leaves Sky in there by herself, and then the entity appears. Sky is scared, of course, falls on the ground, and while she's moving back, she grabs a syringe, and in desperation, she stabs herself with the syringe. Because, I mean, it's a way you're going to get rid of entity, and it looks like it's going to attack you. Now she starts to phase out, and you're like, oh, did she actually get rid of the entity and everything else? Goes black, you hear laughing, and then you realize all the vision comes back, you see the entity laughing and everything else, and it was all fake. It was probably the best writing I've seen between both movies. This was the most amazing thing because I always wondered if the entity has this much control, like how is this even happening? But yeah, it made you think that we won. Nope. Amazing moment. My favorite moment out of this movie, 100%. So after the entity actually is done trolling, we then jump over to the last scene where Sky's on stage, where the entity at this point does its thing. It gets out of her body and it takes full control out of her. Sky then grabs the mic and then starts hitting herself in the face until she's dead on live camera. But the part of this really did pull me out of suspense because this is supposed to be a big production. Why didn't anyone stop the broadcast? Because you saw people at home watching it. Turn the lights off. Why did no one do anything or even try to intervene in the chaos, but just let it play? Which was very unrealistic and I would say very poorly handled, considering the scene before was so good. And all it really did was open up like a bag of worms as far as the entity's logic, which I know is probably because they want to make more movies. So like the movie opens up with a scene where that it did seem that after this TV event is the entity is now broadcast to multiple people and it's out there. Now, did it travel through like the TV? Like did it just hit everyone in the stadium? Is there a AoE effect of it? Like what's the distance this entity traveled? So it's like a bittersweet moment where it is world building, but it leaves you kind of frustrated, or at least it leaves me kind of frustrated. I'm just like, we saw in the first movie where the entity was looking to the TV screen or to the monitor when being recorded. So it's like, is this thing like able to be recorded? And if you record the same scene of like Sky slamming herself with the mic and you play it in front of someone, the entity is magically just going to be multiplied. So is this how the Ring starts? Is this the start of the Ring? Besides all of that, Smile 2 of course did have its flaws. That was being one of them. The protagonist was pretty twisted. The delivery as far as our horror or creepy moments and psychological twists were okay. However, I mean, it was overall very overly dramatic. The plot didn't really appear to hold together for the simple fact Morris had to come and explain a lot of things, and I can't think the entity purposely did it and explain everything about how it works. But you never know, man. The entity apparently in this show or movie decided it wanted to troll. I'll probably give it, if anything, Smile 2 a 3 out of 5. There's a lot of potential here, but uneven execution and a lot of unanswered questions. But it made a bunch of movie in the box office, so we're probably going to see a Smile 15. So we'll see more. We'll see more. So I'm very hopeful for that. Now, would I recommend Smile 2? If you do enjoy supernatural horror with a psychological twist, it's 100% worth it to watch. But if you're someone who needs a tight plot without loose ends or very light loose ends, it might not be the movie for you. Or I would say wait until they release more. Because it looks like, of course, because of how the entity works, these should all be linked together unless they use that whole TV scene to start a completely different storyline. But hopefully they keep it linked together. But for you, which I'm assuming a lot of you listening to this did watch Smile 2, what did you like from that movie? And did it even meet your expectation? Were you left frustrated? Did you have any questions or anything? But let me know. Of course, thanks for watching. I will see you next time, and please make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and roll on the floor.